Let's listen to David Brooks here go on and on about the idea of centrism and how centrists aren't represented in American politics. And then I'll explain why he's wrong and why, to me, this actually represents a kind of cult-like following. I call it the cult of centrism.
And so we've gone through another cycle. I think you look statistically, the cycle started in the 70s. And we should be pulling out of it if you look at sort of rough historical patterns of 30 years. I think what prevents us from pulling out of it is strictly institutional. If you go to a dinner party in Washington, on the left, there's a bunch of academic and donors and think tanks. And so they've got a real infrastructure on the left. On the right, a bunch of donors, think tanks, academics. They've got infrastructure on the right. If you go to a dinner in the middle, it's just a bunch of lobbyists. They have no infrastructure. There's no centrist to moderate infrastructure for fundraising. There's no intellectual infrastructure. There's just a void. And so if you're a politician, you want to head out to the middle, there's just nobody there. Right. But if you deviate from the right or left, there's punishment. So we've got an institutional problem.
No, we don't. Here's the problem. The Democrats are the centrists. It's amazing. That's the most intellectually lazy argument I can imagine. Because that's how somebody talks about politics when they don't know anything about politics. They say, well, I agree a little bit with Republicans on some issues. I agree a little bit with Democrats on some issues. And, I think both sides are way too polarized and we should meet in the middle and compromise on stuff. And what that completely dismisses is the historical reality that the traditional conservative positions and liberal positions are no longer represented by the two political parties. What happened is the spectrum shifted so far to the right that you have the Republicans who are out there in Kookyville, flat out representing 100% Wall Street and corporations and their donors and their special interests and their flat earthers and Civil War reenactors and insane people, however that quote from Bill Maher went. And the Democrats have shifted to the right as well, so they are now in the center. The Democrats are a center-right party. So for this idiot to call for a centrist revival and, that's what we need a stronger centrist political affiliation to try to get more moderate ideals passed. Well, what are you talking about? If you go to the center between where the Democrats are right now and the Republicans are right now, which is what he wants, you're just flat out on the right wing. You're pretty far right if you're looking for the center between these two crazy parties. So the problem is not centrism. The problem is we have no left in the United States of America. And I'll take it a step further. If you look at the polls, what is centrism? What do we define as centrism? Well, I would argue it's the center of the country, right? That would be what centrism is. Well, guess what? The center of the country is actually fairly liberal. And we can go through the polls. We've done it a zillion times, but the reality is a majority of the American people want immigration reform. They want a path to citizenship. A majority want action on climate change. A majority do not want any cuts to Social Security. A majority do not want any cuts to Medicare or Medicaid or education. A majority want taxes raised on people making $250,000 or more. A majority want a minimum wage hike. And the list goes on and on. A majority want Medicare for all. I mean, on every single political issue, bar maybe one or two, the American people are strongly liberal. So actual centrism is pretty fucking liberal. In fact, you know who a real centrist might be, at least in terms of international politics? This guy. You're listening to him right now. Kyle Kulinski from SecularTalk Radio. I'm a real centrist. I'm a real moderate. I'm a real independent. Okay? Because I actually represent the ideals and the beliefs of the majority of the American people on most issues, except the issue of religion, of course. But that's a different topic for another day. But politically speaking, I'm rather centrist. David Brooks is not. David Brooks is a deep right-winger and a pro-establishment idiot. He's one of these guys who he thinks that there's a legitimate debate going on in the country between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. But they're so far off to the right end of the political spectrum that it's comical, that the American people aren't represented at all. I mean, for fuck's sake, there was a study done recently by a bunch of political scientists, and they went back through the history of legislation since 1980 and onward, and what they found is that the American people, our opinions aren't represented at all by our representatives. Isn't that amazing? So the idea that David Brooks is giving this gross system legitimacy by saying, well, the Republicans and the Democrats have some decent points, both of them. We should probably meet in the middle and be centrists. But that's the way that a lazy person who doesn't know the facts talks about politics.